Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out, and yes, he is sticking around.
I'm back. I stayed.
We didn't want him to leave. And Judy Nathans.
George Metzger.
Oh.
And I'm Patrick Barrett.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
You gotta try out some comedy, like stand-up or something. Really.
There
Go
we
to
go.
Improv
I'll get there,
Boston.
I'll get there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
working on it. Yeah.
All right.
My mom says I'm very funny.
You are.
You're all right.
So, what do we have for this half hour here?
Well, just a few things actually. I
Okay.
thought I'd just sort of mention just because they're at least a little bit timely. One is that, in fact, this coming Monday is Memorial Day weekend. You know, the official start of summer.
Right.
And I'm actually going to put a plug in for the Memorial Day parade and well, let's not call them festivities, but the the observances they do up at the Cambridge Cemetery afterwards. So that's on Monday, May 28th, 9:30 a.m. from the Common, and they march. Actually, it's kind of a nice little parade. You know, I enjoyed it a lot, and several of the city councilors were there last year, and it's up at the Cambridge Cemetery. And, you know, they have a little musical performance. They have CRLS students who will sing a few numbers. And it's actually pretty good. It's actually not a bad idea just to go actually walk around Cambridge Cemetery. Actually, it's great to go walk around Mount Auburn Cemetery. They're really beautiful places. So anyway, I just wanted to sort of mention that. It's sort of a good thing. City's still looking for applicants for various city boards and commissions. I'll do a few quick ones. Public planting, you got to apply by June 11th. If you want to be a member of it was 4 members on the Library Board of Trustees?
4.
You're asking the wrong guy.
I'm asking right. Anyway, the one person, I don't even know who that's leaving, but there's a vacancy on the Library Board of Trustees.
James Roosevelt left, but maybe that was a while ago.
Did he leave?
Yeah.
Oh, well then maybe that's the seat they're taking. So anyway, that deadline is June 4th. There's the Cambridge Open Data Review Board.
Oh boy.
They're looking for people by June 4th.
Is that like surveillance?
Is the Central Square Advisory
not
Board
surveillance.
somebody?
I think the closing date happened. I think we're at 7, and the full complement would be 9.
You talking about the Central Square?
Central Square Advisory Committee. So that's in the hands of the city manager now. There's also another vacancy on the Cambridge Human Rights Commission. The deadline is 3 days from now, May 25th.
And all of this can be found on the city website, on your website?
Both, yeah. The city's doing a much better job of consolidating these things so you can actually go to one thing, something called blah, blah, blah / apply. I'm not sure the rest.
Once you go through their whole homepage, it's not...
And you go there and it'll actually list the ones where there are vacancies, where they're looking for people. And you know, there's a big issue. Denise Simmons sort of brings up a thing about it's not a really good representative cross-section. I think she's right. But it's not, you know, it's only going to be as good as there are people who actually.
You're talking about on all the commissions are on.
Yeah. And, you know, and
right, you have to have the time to serve.
You have to serve. That's the big one.
And the thing is,
it's parent or your work.
Most of them don't require tremendous burdensome time unless it's the planning board. And honestly,
those people should be paid.
We should at least give them lots of swag.
I think they should get a
medals.
stipend. I think they do as much work as the council.
There are some places actually where I believe planning board members do get stipends. We don't.
I don't know.
The reason why they don't get paid because it can be seen as a conflict of interest in some cases.
Maybe.
And we don't as counselors.
Well, that's every 2 years.
But they have to be elected. Okay,
that's
all
right.
You're
That's
right.
That's
you're
right.
Okay.
But anyway, you know, keep an eye out for this. I'm kind of big into promoting that level of citizen involvement.
Because that's one thing about Cambridge, you can get involved. There's lots of opportunities.
It's really true.
For better or for worse.
Actually,
right.
I'm not saying this just to toot my own horn here, but I would say that I was just earlier today. I was thinking about it was because I was writing up my snarky comments for the city council meeting, and they were doing something down at Magazine Beach, and you know there's some funding in there, and my hats off to the
whole
citizen activism that really helped make all
Kathy,
these improvements
Susie.
happen.
Yay, Kathy.
Really, honestly, heroic people to really make good things happen. As I like to say, it's the right type of civic activism, making positive things happen. But I was thinking about it and thinking to myself, I made reference to the Green Ribbon Open Space report, which is actually dated 2000, that actually talked about Magazine Beach. And I was thinking back and I said, you know, when I was on that, I actually made some suggestions, some of which are actually coming.
Yeah, like what?
Coming real.
Soccer field?
I'm sure I wouldn't have been the only one to suggest it, but I remember distinctly talking about the use of the Grand Junction Railroad right of way as a means of making a connection for people from East Cambridge to Magazine Beach.
Huh.
And now the city's hot to trot about Grand Junction Railroad. I alerted them to the fact that there was another right of way that used to come up to the back of the old Necco plant, and now there's a bikeway pedestrian path
A little
there.
bit, yeah.
That was it.
It kind of ends.
It
But
came,
it's
it used
nice.
to go a lot longer
Yeah.
up there. You know, I said, well, yeah, I think I believe that was my suggestion.
Oh, okay,
And-
Robert,
and
so you're
actually,
influential.
You know, and even thinking of
We
Magazine
all knew
Beach.
that.
No, I'm saying.
No, it's
I'm
good,
saying
yeah.
is that when you're actually on some of these city boards and commissions, as long as you come into it with the right attitude and some good ideas, and you're just trying to be constructive, it's not like the city just ignores you. They actually
And
go,
you might
oh,
see
that's a
the
pretty good
results of
idea.
this,
You know, Richie Rossi was sort of riding herd on a lot of things in those days, and he was picking the ideas right up, and making things happen. So it's a great opportunity if you can do it that way. So
Good.
Even despite my long-term weird experience on the Ribbon Commission and then C2, it was actually fun while we were doing the work.
Huh.
you'll learn a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it's like an education too.
It is.
So, and you don't have to pay tuition, and they're not going to pay you either.
They
So,
are, definitely.
so
They
that's
might
the
give you
deal.
pizza. They might give you pizza.
They might give you pizza. That's true. That's true. Yeah. Anyway, so those are just some of the things. So, again, we spent a lot of time talking about Central Square. Made a few
All the fun.
references to Harvard Square.
You're talking about what now? Last night or?
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about one of the other squares, not served by the Red Line,
Nope.
Nope.
that are known as Inman Square. And I think that's worthy of talking about a little bit, only because it was kind of like the big,
Dominant.
hairy item in the middle of the council
Well,
meeting.
most
last
of the
night.
public comment was about it.
Right, predictable as heck, that in fact most people are going to come out for that.
Bicycles are very polarizing.
Well, not all the
Organization.
public comment was specifically, they just didn't, it was more trees and bikes.
Trees
Yeah,
and bikes.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And,
So anyway, the idea is that even this actually dates back to any tragedies or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's always been understood that sort of in many ways the elongated X nature of Inman Square kind of lent itself toward some potentially bad traffic conflicts.
Yep.
Of course, many of us remember the time when intersections like that were more the norm, and then there have been a lot of changes. I remember where Brattle Street came off of Mount Auburn, down by the cemetery, used to be a complete free-for-all, and then they put in some traffic island and reconfigured things. A lot of squares were unsignalized, crazy person
I
places.
still think bicyclists are the bravest or the craziest people in the city. You couldn't pay me. And I say that having talked
So
to
you
bike-
don't ride bike?
I walk everywhere.
yeah, I do too, and I'm scared
walk
as
a
hell when I'm on a
slowly.
bike, but I do.
Right. But I think it was an acknowledgement that Inman
Yeah.
Square needed something.
Yeah,
So there was already a process, and then there was a tragedy, which was unrelated to the
right
process.
around the same
Right,
time.
but it
yeah.
kind of galvanized people, and it brought out particularly cyclist folks who basically were very demanding and say, you got to
Yeah.
do this, you got to do that, which worked, kind of in sync with at least one person who works in community development department who sort of philosophically believes that cyclists should be moved on to off-road facilities.
Oh,
And
Just a question to clarify. Is it the belief that they should be moved off or that there should be an option?
it really depends. The thing is that there were people who I knew who left the Cambridge Bicycle Committee because of a conflict with people who were there who felt that cyclists, I mean, I hate to put it simply, that they didn't belong on the road. They should be moved onto separate bicycling
separate
infrastructure.
facilities is what they
And
call
that
it,
was
yeah.
the only means of achieving
Guaranteeing
safety.
safety, yeah.
There was also coupled with a kind of a Dutch point of view of so-called slow cycling, that in fact they didn't really care so much about the people who were the sort of fast-moving commuting bicyclists so much.
I wish they'd stop comparing us to the Netherlands,
You
because,
know,
it's just a whole different
it is-
culture
it's
and different,
different climate, a lot of different
different
things.
climate, there's more bikes than cars, I mean,
Right.
everything's different there.
So the net result of all of this is that what bubbles up, there were multiple alternatives that were proposed for how to reconfigure Inman Square. I think by the time all was said and done, I think somebody said there were about 4 of them. One was where you bend Hampshire Street, the other one where you bend Cambridge Street. There was one they called the Peanut Design, which was
This
essentially...
is without moving the plaza. This is before they considered moving
right.
the plaza?
So there was one they called the Peanut Design, which was essentially to
Oh, right, I
turn
wanted to
it all
ask you
into-
what you mentioned that in your comment, I didn't know what that
Right.
meant.
Well, basically, it would have turned all of Inman Square into a rotary, or kind of an elongated rotary.
Like an eight, figure eight?
Well, like a peanut,
Oh,
like a peanut
okay.
shape, sort of like a stretched out eight. Yeah.
All right,
And I'm not against rotaries. I actually kind of think rotaries can work very well. In fact, I would argue that when they got rid of the rotary where Route 2 meets Freshpond Parkway, that's when they created the traffic nightmares.
there is a rotary there. What do you mean they got rid of it?
Well, no, there's like a lot of interlooping roads now, but they used to have just an ordinary rotary.
Oh, so you didn't have a lot of people coming into it? I thought a rotary
Well-
just where people all come into the same.
Right, but the thing is that everybody just goes round and round,
Right.
and you could go round and round forever. You can't do that at where Fresh Pond Parkway meets Fresh Pond Parkway.
Oh,
and
I
Elmsville
see what you're
Parkway.
saying. Well,
Route
yeah,
2 meet.
okay. Oh, it's
They
terrible, I know.
eliminated that, and the
Yeah.
reason they eliminated it was that there were a lot of incidents. I think that was the highest crash rate site in all of
Are you talking about
Massachusetts.
where it meets Route 2?
Yes.
Oh, not by the
Right-
Concord?
right at, you know,
I'm thinking of Concord Road.
just-
That's a real
yeah.
rotary, okay.
Just
Oh, yeah.
cheek to jowl with the LFT
You don't
station.
like the way that is?
I think it's very complicated, and it may be in some respects safer than the rotary as it
Yeah.
was.
I think it
But
is.
some might argue that they could have changed the rotary design to make that very safe, and that it would have facilitated traffic better.
Don't you think there have just been competing philosophies as a continuum of how we've been approaching traffic, cycling, and pedestrians?
Yeah.
And that in itself, I think, has caused a bit of a kerfuffle, because if you talk to CDD or people in traffic and parking, and they'll say sometimes that, traffic was the point. And I think that actually makes people very angry, because
Yeah.
I think they seem like they're not part of that. They never got that memo. But
It reminds me when they were talking about the pizza place, the Ann Pizza Place in Harvard Square.
Yeah.
One of the members of the Harvard Square advisory committee and former, head honcho of the Harvard Square Defense Fund was sort of arguing, well, this is going to bring traffic, and then another member, the chair, says, well, I thought that was a good thing.
Yeah,
Right? You actually wanted to have people coming to
the
Harvard
end
Square.
user
Well-
saga was just
That was
bizarre.
just
And if you
very
look at where it is, you're like, what?
yeah,
What was
seriously.
that
I know.
gonna be?
Right, exactly. I'm
Yeah.
just looking forward for it to open, and I hope the pizza's not too expensive, but we'll see.
I just hope
Right.
it's good. It's hard to grow
And-
pizza.
yeah, that too. Yeah, that counts. But anyway,
All
I
right, so
want to.
getting back to then all right.
Well, let's just say one thing.
Yeah.
I think one of the problems I have with the way everything happens in this city is that it's like one
One
bandwagon
problem.
after another.
Yeah.
Sort of like, so some years ago, what was the hot way? This was going to solve all the world's issues, and then it became something else. So right now, separated bike lanes is sort of like the be-all, end-all. Whereas if it was 5 years ago, I don't think I heard anybody even use the phrase. You
No.
know, so 5 years from now, when they're going to look back and they say flexi post, oh yeah, isn't that thing we did as a temporary thing on Cambridge Street? Oh, that was kind of ridiculous, but now we've got something else, and it'll just be the next big thing.
Well, they're here to stay. I don't think bikes are gonna go away, and now
No,
you got.
bike's not going to go away.
yeah.
The way you try
Yeah.
to achieve the best results
Right.
seems to be changing all the
Well,
time.
True.
you talked about the different culture.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with that, but I think there's been a real push to change the culture. And while you and I may have a hard time living in this brave new world,
Yeah,
my son and my daughter, may
who are babies
who are in
now.
a 4 and 1
Yeah,
may
yeah.
see a different place, and then
Well, that's
it may be
true.
the norm.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
And there's people in the council who think right now that in 10 years none of us will be driving cars. I don't believe that.
I don't
Yeah.
But
believe
if,
it.
but if
Well,
you're
'cause they'll
operating
be
from that
driverless.
perspective,
Yeah, well,
it's
Right.
yeah. I mean,
all
things.
these conflicts of who
Yeah.
think. And certainly, I don't think anyone's going to agree. Because look at the traffic right now.
Yeah.
That the
No,
future.
traffic
Oh,
is.
quick, turn
is
the camera.
traffic is.
Imagine cars.
Traffic. I mean, it's interesting because if anything, cars have gotten bigger. You'd think because of gas price. I look around.
Ford just doubled down on that. They said no more cars. We're building SUVs.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I mean, go to.
But on the other hand, I see these things that are glorified golf carts that are out there. I see many more of them on the streets. now,
Really?
too.
The
Yeah.
little mini. I
They're
see
little,
more.
well, they're
See, I
cheap
park
to
and park.
operate.
You don't drive much, Robert. To be frank.
What do you mean? I drove over 600
And
miles last
Yeah,
year.
what
right.
you do drive is like
It's-
a,
it's really
a
ancient.
Winnebago.
I mean, I have a Subaru. I have a Subaru Impreza, which is big, probably in Europe or somewhere. But I'm swamped by SUVs and mini, anywhere I park, like in a
Right.
parking lot. So that's. I don't know.
I drive a monster truck, so I'm guilty, but.
Well, you carry
my
things in
wife
it.
drives a dog car.
I
You
think
carry
it's,
things in
I
it,
think
right?
it's relatively clear. There's a bit of a generational divide when you go to these
Yeah.
public meetings.
Yeah.
You will
Definitely.
often find
Oh,
people
yeah.
who are approximately 30 years of age saying how everybody should be on a bike. And then you'll
They
see
have
other
no,
people
no
who
cable
are,
TV,
I thought
no
it was
car.
never trust
Right,
anybody
yeah,
over
to
30.
church, yeah.
right, but then you'll see a lot of other people who are basically, maybe they get a little over the top sometimes.
Yeah.
Them crazy bikers, get off of my lawn.
Yeah, there's an
Right?
extreme, and then there's people in the middle.
Right, but the truth is, as people do get older, their mobility may be compromised sometimes. So maybe they kind of want to have the motor vehicle option available to them, or maybe they want
Did
to
you
get
hear
to the
Sarah
pharmacy.
May Berman's comments? I thought it was amazing. I'm 80 something, and I'm not afraid to bike, and I bike.
She's not.
And
I
I
see her
walk.
on a bike every day.
I think she's not the norm, but anyway, that was pretty
Way
amazing.
better than me.
No, but
Yeah.
the point is that there are people who will
Yeah.
be bicycling into the.
Yeah.
I see one fellow
Right.
who's
It's in
on a
your.
bike
It's
here in
in
his
your.
90s, and it's fine. I think it's great.
Did she
and we
win the
want-
marathon one year?
She was a marathon
so, I
runner.
mean,
I
I'm
don't know
just
if she
saying-
won, but she was one of the early.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's important just because
Yeah.
it looks like religious factions to me. And I think it's good
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
just to parse
yeah.
the nonsense.
Yeah.
In
No,
Harvard
yeah.
Square, they had issues with bike lanes because of loss of commerce and business, which is just there's nothing that supports that. And like in a place like Central Square, I can go back to that a little bit, where like we have
Yeah.
we widened the sidewalks. We didn't really
Yeah.
do much of them after we did that. We're just trying to figure out what could be done. If there's an argument for raised bike lanes, there's an argument against it. But at
It
the same
depends on where it is.
I'd rather talk about it in terms of
Right.
how we make the place safer
Right.
and what's the right policy for the right area.
The issue that I have often with these, because I'm totally supportive of separated bike lanes where it makes total sense. What I don't like is when somebody comes in with a pre-baked notion that putting
Yeah.
in a two-way bike facility on
Oh,
one side
boy.
of the street that creates conflicts, rather than consider more interesting alternatives, which in my view would involve taking that whole stretch of Brattle Street into a two-way road. Or at the very least, if you don't want to have cars go one way, a contraflow lane on one side and then the bicycles the others. But the thing is that when everybody gets wedded to the bandwagon of flexi posts and PVC pipe as the answer to all things, then the conversation isn't even allowed to proceed.
I kind
on
of have big
alternatives.
plans for Brattle Street.
Yeah.
It's the site of my.
Oh no, you're not taking over.
My third petition,
Barrett.
the affordable housing overlay, which
All
is
right.
concentrated solely.
So it's
on
the
that.
Harvard Square
That's the other
Restoration.
overlay.
So you heard it
Right,
first.
right.
You heard it first here. It's the Harvard Square Restoration petition. Right.
We're going real tall.
We're going.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
That should cause some nightmares.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine when
Trigger
all
warning.
that construction
Well,
is
actually,
going to
you know,
begin.
in Harvard Square conversation,
The Harvard Square stuff's gonna be tricky.
I mean, there's so many different things.
Well,
There's
you
Chan
know,
stuff. There's Equi.
there was when I
There's no
think,
place to stage it. That's the problem.
I know.
right,
They're going to have to
when
close
they
it
were
down.
when they were talking about the and I imagine it'll come back some version of the so-called Croon petition.
Yep.
It'll
Oh,
come back eventually.
that was
right?
our wife area. No.
No. that
Oh,
was
the Croon
Deep in
was.
Heart
Oh,
of-
you're right.
of
I'm thinking.
Harvard Square.
Right.
But the thing is that they were trying to be very prescriptive about, well, we want to do this and we really
Yeah.
believe in housing, whatever.
Oh,
But
this is all-
unfortunately, housing being such a zoning being such a potentially
Yeah.
blunt instrument, all of what they were proposing would actually have made anything good that Gerald Chan has got
Right.
in the works
Right, which
impossible.
they realized. They.
And then they
right,
said,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
excuse it, please, maybe we got to rethink this.
I think there's a real disconnect, because I think a lot of those people really thought that what they were doing was promoting housing, but I think
Yeah.
they look at it they look at regulations and the stick as being the encouragement. I'm not sure what parochial school they went to, but where incentives are really the only way you
Yeah.
get where you want to go. You just
Yeah.
and like, going back from the last
That's right.
episode,
Yeah.
what do you want to have happen, and then
Yeah.
zone back into it.
Right.
Stop trying to, they're 60 feet above, nothing goes.
They don't want anything to happen in some ways.
No,
I mean,
actually,
they want,
no,
and some
to be
people just
fair-
want to keep it the character it
No,
is.
I think actually and
I disagree.
Yeah.
it actually kind of surprised me that in fact some of the people who I would have thought would have, if you
You're talking about
we-
the Harvard Square.
Yeah, if we want to allow some more height to put in
Yeah.
housing, I thought they would have just found a way to make that. Oh no, that don't you realize that'll destroy the historic fabric? Or they'd come up with something, right?
Yeah.
But in fact, they were okay with some height in some of those places in there.
Well, it's so low. Some of
Right.
it.
Well, I
Some
think
of the really
if
low
you
ones.
look at like the strip of properties that just sold where
Felipe?
Yeah, Felipe's is.
Yeah.
It's right on
It's one-
T. It's
right.
a huge plot of land. It's consecutive. It's contiguously owned. That's a place where you could go.
But
And
it's
should.
not gonna. But it's
Should.
gonna be high priced. Who's gonna live up there?
it's all going to be high price.
I know,
think you
I
have to
know,
get
that's
over
the-
that. Like, I mean,
I know.
we have to sit. I mean, and that's
Yeah.
like the housing crisis stuff. Like,
Right, yeah,
steel, bricks, and wood all
Yeah.
still cost what they cost.
Yeah.
Labor all still costs what it
I
costs.
know.
So unless you're bringing in massive subsidies, it's going to be
Yeah.
expensive.
Right.
But the idea is that you diffuse price, or that you at least take people who are going to go buy homes inside these neighborhoods that we love that are still quasi-affordable, and knock them down and turn them into a deluxe, massive place with a movie theater in the basement and a huge thing in the backyard. I did that. And get them into these newer things, which you can
Well,
prove time and time again that's what they'll
And
do.
again, just take the long view. Buildings that are new today will not be new 20 years from now, but they'll still be there.
The long view. I mean, does
gotta take the
everyone
long
think
view.
Central Square is going to look like this in 100 years? Does everyone think
100 years, I don't think we're gonna be around.
We are not, but these places
No,
are.
I mean, I think the
It's
world.
better to drive the conversation
Yeah.
than to stick your head in the sand.
Right,
Yeah.
Right. But every time I see an older apartment building and say, "Oh yeah, at least that provided affordable housing," I say, "I bet you when it opened, it was
Wasn't so
considered
affordable."
expensive." Right. So, but the thing
Well-
is that we got so behind the curve in building some of these things for decades and decades. So we're in kind of a catch-up mode right now.
I don't think anything's really affordable unless someone comes in and specifically makes it that way.
Well, that's where inclusionary zoning comes in.
Right, but beyond that,
But
like a whole building.
I don't know.
because-
I think we all kind of need to get a grip, and
Yeah.
the housing is what it is. If you want to
Yeah.
make it, we need a regional housing strategy if you're going to
Yeah.
attack affordability. Cambridge is expensive. I lived in Los
Yeah.
Angeles for 10 years, and I know
Yeah.
living on Malibu would have been fantastic, but guess what? I couldn't afford it, so I didn't live in Malibu. I lived in
That's all.
Ventura, which was not fabulous. Looked kind of like Twin Peaks, but California. But you have to
Yeah.
go where you can afford, and
Yeah.
make your life. I think that trying to hem it in is where we run into all these problems.
Right. I mean, I grew up in eastern Queens in New York, and we could have all bitched and moaned about how expensive Manhattan was. Well, we didn't live in Manhattan. We lived 20 miles away, but at least we had the
Yeah, but
number
now
7
it's
train to get there.
affecting places like, Quincy's getting expensive.
And it also,
you know,
I mean, it
and
seems
it's-
terribly disingenuous to me when I see and hear people complain all the time about the affordability component here, when meanwhile they live in a $2 million house or $1 million house, and you're like, well, if you wanted to, you upon departure could depreciate your house and make that affordable. If you bought your home, if you bought your home pre-1999, you bought it for nickels in the dollar,
Yeah.
way below the cost of being able to replace it. So I don't know. I think we just kind of have to all collectively say, you know what, Cambridge actually does a pretty good job with housing. We shouldn't beat ourselves
More
up
so
about
than
it.
a lot of places.
Well,
yeah.
if other places did like
Yeah.
what we did or do, the housing issue would be a lot less. And that it's always easy to march in Cambridge for these kinds of things, but much more difficult to march in Manchester by the Sea.
Right.
Yeah.
I maybe because I grew up in New York, I always think, I look at the greater Boston area, I look at things that are a little bit up north, maybe not all the way up to Manchester by the sea, but, some places here where there's actually railroad tracks
Right.
that are kind of on commuter lines that could be rapid transit lines. And
Yeah,
there are ways in which you can grow this city a little bit outward.
Well, we
and
dropped the
still-
ball, the whole thing,
I
a
know,
long time
I
ago,
know,
because it would have been better. Yeah.
We run into this problem where
Yeah.
people, activists in Cambridge, think that, well, we're going to solve all of the world's housing problems
Right, in Cambridge,
and
yeah.
peace problems.
Well, that's
it's all going to be done within the confines of
my
our 6.3
total beef
square
with a
miles.
group like A Better Cambridge. They should call themselves A Better Project, because they have no large top-down focus. They look on individual projects, and it's so hard to say, if Rich McKinney can build 200 units here, the world is saved. That makes no sense to me.
So you're
and I
saying-
love Rich. I love you, Rich, but
Yeah,
like, it's just,
so you're saying that isn't necessarily the solution.
you should be fighting for units. You should be fighting for a strategy, or at least the culture, to change, change what our zoning allows to create the thing that we want.
But I thought that's
Right.
what they are doing. No,
What they're doing is, I've never seen them bring a zoning petition. I've never seen them lay down a scheme, and there's certainly enough brains in that group to be able to do that. To say this is what we want. We want form zoning. We want to go up to here in the places that make sense. We want to but none of that. They show up for projects. They support that, but they never
So I see, all right,
Right,
well,
I mean,
have a global look.
yeah,
They came into existence, in my view, as sort of a reaction
to
to
the
kind
whole.
of an anti-housing kind of
They came into
mindset.
existence in the
Because of
production of
Massimo.
Tuscaninis.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, but so they basically exist to support the building of housing that might otherwise be opposed.
Right, and that's important.
And it is good because it's nice when it's appropriate, but I'm still waiting for the day where they'll say, well, we saw this housing proposal for here and there, we don't think that one's a good one.
But
Yeah.
They won't even do that because I don't think they care.
But it's a defensive posture, so like, if you're
Yeah,
always on the
yeah.
defense, you can never be on the
Okay,
offense.
before we close though, can you just, the Inman Square thing, no, seriously, how did it end up?
Okay,
Did it
so,
get charter righted?
It was made
City
subject to the
manager
charter
wanted to
right
go
by
to the
Quentin
state to get a
Zondervan.
petition.
Right, so
Yeah,
the
okay.
idea was they had
Yeah.
to go for a home rule petition to the state
For
to
the open
move
space
the
issue.
open space from Vellucci
And my
Park
question
across
to
to
you
there.
was, does that mean they have to do it if they get the permission from the state?
And I'm not 100% sure
Because
that
that's
they
why I
were
was
then
wondering why they
obliged
didn't
to
ask
do
that,
it.
like, why don't you just get the
I'm
permission
not
and then
sure
decide whether,
if you get permission, you're obliged to do anything. You just
well,
never
that's what
can
we
do
don't
it.
know.
Yeah, it depends on how
Nobody asked that,
how the
yeah.
home rule petition is
So
written.
then just get it, so you know
Yeah.
you have it,
What was the
but,
Right.
purpose of charter writing it?
You know,
because
the-
because there was so
it's-
much objection to the plan as it was, and they didn't want it to move
Right.
forward, I guess.
Now, I have to say, I mean, as we talked about last week,
Yeah.
I love trees.
Yeah.
Right? But the thing is, there are some people who.
But it wasn't just about the trees.
Right, it wasn't just
Yeah,
about the
yeah.
trees, but the thing is that I think were it not for the fact that a few trees
Yeah.
would be cut down, is what galvanized certain
Yeah.
individuals to sort
Yeah.
of make a movement out of it.
Yeah.
Trees do regrow, and you can move them, and now they're talking about moving them across to the plaza, whole
Creating a
trees, which
different
I
plaza.
think is
Every
silly.
time the Lorax shows up.
But
Yeah,
some people
yeah.
felt like
But-
was it that $6 million figure to reconfigure this whole square? Is that
It's something,
necessary?
I
don't know.
that nobody wants to change horses midstream at this point. They've
Yeah.
taken it this far down
Yeah.
the road, but the truth is that that's a lot of money for
It is.
really just basically moving the lines around.
And
a
as
little
one of the
bit. And
commenters said, we could use that money for the bridge in
build-
Hawaii.
build the $6 million for the
Seriously,
bridge in
that's
Hawaii,
what they
now
really
we'll
should be
really be
working
happy,
on.
right?
That's
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway,
Anyway,
well,
so-
we're down to 12
And there's no
seconds.
meeting
12
next
seconds.
week because it's a holiday, and we'll may or may not be here. We'll see.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
gonna work on that.
I will not be.
All right.
But
Yeah, we-
Patrick, thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah.
See you next week.
And